everybody, and welcome to Little Nightmares 2. This is a horror game from 2021, and I am quite fond of it. And I thought it would be a fun October video to fit in with a little more of a spooky catalog of content. So we are beginning here shortly after the beginning of the game. And we have been wandering through a forest full of traps, bear traps and such. And now we find ourselves in a home in the woods, so we will see what we can find in here. Through this cracked door, we can see a little girl curled up on the carpet. There's a lot of stuffing and a sewing machine. And in this room we find a little hatchet. So, as I'm playing, I will talk about this game and, more broadly, the very niche little genre that it is a part of. A genre which I am a real fan of. So, years ago, and I'm not a historian of this or anything, I might not have the full picture here, but I do remember years ago, don't know the exact year, maybe 2006 or something, let's say, there was a game that appeared on Flash gaming websites. You know, those old Flash game websites like Armor Games and Addicting Games and Congregate and all that. Oh, this is a very freaky little room here. 3 people sit at a table. They seem to be stitched together. But the game that appeared on the internet, on these Flash game websites, was called Limbo. And in Limbo, you played as a small boy navigating a dark, frightening world full of monsters and murderous people. And it was very atmospheric. There was tension and horror elements, some light puzzling and platforming. And as far as I know, Limbo basically kicked off a new genre. I don't know what to call the genre. I'll call it limbo-likes, I guess. And if any of you have additional information, if Limbo was heavily inspired by something else, like, let me know. We have another body here. An old woman holding a crank that we need. And we have ripped her arm off. Seems the sewing machine and the stuffing in the basement is being used to stuff the corpses in this house, which is very disturbing. So, these limbo-likes tend to share some very similar elements. They are side-scrolling, sort of puzzle platformer horror games with an emphasis on their atmosphere and their world design. They usually are very sparse on information. Maybe the lore of the world, you might say, is left very open to interpretation. The plot elements and story elements are left very, very lightly filled in. And so you absorb, the information from the environmental design and the little pieces of information that you can gather from that. They also tend to feature children as the main characters, and these children are always in harm's way. They tend to be very violent, disturbing games. Also, we have come to the owner of this house, a hunter wearing a bag over his head. And we're going to try to sneak past him. But he hears us going out. And he is chasing us down, shooting at us. So, these limbo-like games, I have a real fondness for them. I've been playing the genre since Limbo itself. So, some examples of this genre: Limbo, of course, and then Little Nightmares, which I'm playing now. This is Little Nightmares 2, but Little Nightmares 1 is also great. There was Inside, which was another great one. And this month, October 2025, we are getting two more that I'm very excited about. We are getting Little Nightmares 3, and then the studio behind Little Nightmares 1 and 2, Tarsier Studios. They are releasing their next game, Reanimal. So, I'm excited to dive into both of those games and get my fix of this genre, which has been a little neglected for a while now. And the draw of these games to me, besides the fact that I really just like horror, I'm a big horror is the world. The world and the character design. The worlds are so evocative and so strongly designed that they just create so much mystery. They prompt you to ask questions, you know. You want to know more about the world, but it never gives you those answers outright. It only leaves you to look at the available evidence and sort of come to your own conclusions. And as I've talked about with games like, you know, the From Software games, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and such, I am a fan of games that make you sort of answer those questions yourself. Games that don't give you all of the answers completely laid out. Sorry, I'm concentrating on avoiding or concentrating on this guy here. And yeah, we have a little reprieve here now that we're in the water. And so, the mystery of these worlds is so compelling to me. You know, it's sort of like in a horror movie where oftentimes mystery is more compelling than knowledge, right? Until you actually see a monster, that monster could be anything, it could be anywhere, and that can be much more terrifying than actually just seeing, you know, oh, that's a ghoul, that's some ghoulish, scary creature. When there are blank spaces left in the narrative and world design, it makes for a very compelling world. And these games tend to offer even less information, even fewer answers than, you know, the FromSoft games, which are sort of notoriously obtuse in their lore. So you can imagine just how sparse these games are, if they are even more, difficult to get a handle on. So we have found ourselves in a little shed, trapped as the hunter smashes the door in. We pull a rifle off the wall, line it up, and bang. That is the end of the hunter that was terrorizing us. So, that kind of wraps up Chapter 1 and use it as a raft to push off into the water. So, yeah, you'll see more of the sort of intriguing design as we progress through this game today. You can see hints of it already with, you know, that hunter and his horrifying stuffed humans that he was keeping in his house. But the Little Nightmares universe is also, it's very supernatural and very mysterious in those respects. You can tell there's stuff going on, but the sort of illogical nature of it makes it hard to pin down, and that's also a really cool aspect of it, the sort of surrealism. These games often delve into a surreal aesthetic, or even a bit of an absurd one. There's lots of vast chasms in buildings with one tiny little narrow staircase snaking its way down the chasm, for instance. Or even here as we end our very long boat ride at this city, these leaning buildings tumbling into the water, sort of bending down towards it. It is a preposterous sight in a realist sense, but a very compelling world to explore. It's sort of like being dropped into the worlds of some, surreal paintings, right? Or some highly stylized, illogical worlds in paintings, right? So maybe M.C. Escher, for example. We have a strange sight here, a television with a man's clothes hanging from the broken screen. An alley with the buildings rearing up high in the distance. Who was that painter from, I don't know, the Renaissance or something, who painted all of those very strange, disturbing worlds? Was it Goya? No. Who am I thinking of? What was his name? Maybe he was more medieval. I don't know, it's the one with all of those crazy animals and monsters, and the one with the, the butt music. If you've ever seen that YouTube video where they reconstruct the music painted on somebody's butt in that old painting. There's some game, I think, coming out that's kind of set in the world of that guy's paintings. But anyway, I think that these games do a great job at sort of dropping you into a surreal world like that. It feels very real as you are navigating them, It doesn't, the surrealism escapism of the world doesn't get in the way. It doesn't feel forced. It feels very natural and appropriate to the world that you are exploring. And they do a great job at making it feel natural in that way. Also, just as it's a disturbing sight, just as a random little note, I am wearing a hat. I have equipped a different hat for my character because I think he looks very funny and cute in this little fedora. But his default hat is a paper bag with eye holes cut out of it. And we're getting a look into some sort of strange supernatural connection that this character, Mono, has with televisions. This vision appearing on the screens of a hallway, at the end of which is a door with an eyeball, but Six, our traveling companion, rouses us from our fugue state. And this is a prequel to Little Nightmares 1. So the character that we are traveling with, Six, is actually the player character in Little Nightmares 1. So, we have found our way to what looks like a school. A small playground out front and the school rearing up, very tall and imposing. And hanging from a high window, a linen rope. But Six playing with the ball. I want to go try to kick it at the goal, but struggling to kick. There is a small issue sometimes in these games, if they're a little more 2.5D like this, where it can be difficult to orient myself to know exactly, what push of the stick is going to move my character in the direction that I want to go in. So turning off the light reveals that this portrait has a room behind it. So now that we know that, we just need to go find something to knock that painting off the wall, and also look at that nasty little kid in that painting there. Yeah, it's interesting. These games do often center children, and there was one recently that I tried to play, and I sort of bounced off. I didn't really get into it. Somerville. It was about like aliens arriving. I tried a little bit of it, but I bounced off. But that one had an adult as the main character, and that's sort of unusual for this genre. These types of games do tend to have little kids And I think, for whatever individual reasons the studios do that, of course, it's all there's individual reasons for it, but as a genre trope, I think what it does is heighten the sense of danger and the sense of powerlessness. We have an ominous silhouette there, perhaps of a creature that we might meet in the near future. But yeah, if you were an adult character, even a relatively scrawny one, it sort of indicates that you have a certain degree of power in the world. Of course, you can make a powerless adult character, but at the end of the day, even a powerless adult still has more power than a 10-year-old, right? At least on a sort of physical level. The ability to manipulate the world around you, and that sense is heightened here in Little Nightmares, for instance, where we are children, and yet also that light almost turned me into jelly. We are children here, and all of the buildings and all of the objects in the world are vastly oversized for us. Even here, this is a school. Oh, uh-oh. We have been trapped in this locker. Now these strange porcelain children have kidnapped Six. So we will go after her, see where they're taking her. Oh, they've all gone up this ladder. They're pulling it into the ceiling, so we'll have to find another way. And we can fight back against these little terrors by smashing their heads in. This is actually one part of the game that I think it's effective in some ways, but I think mechanically it's a little awkward. You have to fight a lot of these little porcelain kids. Also, I just love this environment design, right? All these desks stacked up. And fighting these kids is a little clunky. You can very easily miss your swings, and then it's an insta-death, and you have to reload your last checkpoint, so I love the concept, but I think the execution is not perfect. Now we have to creep through this classroom. This school marm teacher is up at the board, writing on it with chalk, and these porcelain students are all sitting at their desks. So we will just creep behind while she is turned away. But yeah, as I was saying, everything in the world is vastly sort of Brobdingnagian compared to us. And have seen for ourselves the very disturbing quirk of this school marm. With her extendo neck that can terrifyingly stretch to impossible lengths. So everything being much larger than us to an impossible degree, sort of, it synergizes with the child main character thing, right? Because as a kid, everything is much bigger than you. And it's, most things are built for adults, not for children, but you as a kid have to kind of navigate the world anyways. I gotta climb up on the countertops to reach the higher cupboards and stuff like that, and we have drawn the attention of the teacher, so we are going to beat feet and use the key that we got to run into the elevator to safety. So, sort of taking that dynamic of the size difference and navigating a world made too large for you. And then exaggerating it, right? Exploding the proportions of that size difference is a great base for a sort of horror world, particularly where you as a child are the one navigating the world. So we have one of the kids here in a dunce cap and tied to a post. We will smash his head in, which is, sort of disturbing because he's kind of a child too, but not really, sort of a porcelain monster in the shape of a child. He was drawing lots of iconography, and this eye icon will be a recurring motif in this game. And if you play the first one, you will know what it is referencing. There's something very compelling and interesting about this segment of the game where we are in a school, but there are no human children. Now they are all these. Oh my god, it's just so freaky. Yeah, there are no actual kids. They're just these vicious little porcelain children. And that's just one of those, sort of what I talked about, right, with the little hints about the world. Why do they have an entire school filled with porcelain school children, right? Did real children ever go there? Was it originally for real kids? What is the point of the porcelain kids? Is that for the benefit of the teacher character? Or are these, simulated children for parental purposes. People want to have kids in some fashion. It makes you think about what's going on and what is it about this world that would lead to these kinds of situations. So that's the type of stuff that I find very compelling, and even if there's not an answer, right? You don't need the answer. It's kind of what I'm getting back to with what makes the lack of answers so compelling is that you never get answers, at least not in a very, very clear way. And that lack of answers just means that it's kind of eternally compelling. And I don't mean to say that it's never good to have answers or whatever, but in a world like this, and in the context of Little Nightmares, it's better to leave the world more mysterious than not. Because if you try to explain it, it just loses a lot of its power. I don't know what Tarsier Studio, I don't know where they're from. I know the publisher is Bandai Namco, which is Japanese, I believe. Which I bring up because this long-necked woman reminds me of a Japanese sort of supernatural creature. A yokai, right? Is that what they're called? The sort of spirits. And I'm remembering this movie, 100 Yokai, or 1000 Yokai. It's been quite a while since I've watched it. It's this old Japanese horror movie from the 70s or 80s. What was it called? It has some name, like Night of 1000 Yokai or Spook Warfare. I'm trying to recall, but anyway, it shows a lot of Japanese spirits, and I know some of them from other sources, but like the dung eater from Elden Ring, they say, is inspired by one that eats your soul or something through your, let's say, nether portal. And that's why the character is called the Dung Eater. But anyway, there's a lot of visual imagery in that movie, all the different spirits, the yokai, that stayed with me, and one of them is like a little umbrella creature that hops around, and one of them is a woman whose neck extends very long. And so, I don't know if there's Japanese influence on this game, or even just a sort of Japanese mythology influence, and that would make sense actually now that I think about it, because in the first game there's a prominent character who dresses in a sort of Japanese style. feature character is inspired by that Japanese yokai whose neck can grow very long. So here we have a little puzzle laid out. We just have to arrange these chess pieces in a particular order on the board to uncover some kind of secret. To move these heads around and boom, a little light lights up and we can pull this and reveal a secret room. The chair and the dog being sort of reminds me of Coraline, right? Doesn't she get locked in the cabinet? What am I thinking of? Is that Coraline? There's a book where a girl is getting she gets locked in the cabinet as punishment. What am I thinking of? Somebody help me. Somebody tell me in the comments what. That might not be Coraline. Oh man, I'm struggling with the references today. This is my third reference that I'm trying to make, and yet I can't remember the exact details of it. So we are moving into a kitchen area here. In our continued search for Six, wherever she has been abducted to. And in the kitchen, it seems we have a horde of these little monsters. Smash that one in. And the name Little Nightmares, it's sort of, you can take it a few different ways, right? Because kids can be kind of called little nightmares. If some kid is a real brat, you might call them a little terror or a little nightmare or something. So there's that element of the name, but also you're a little kid navigating a nightmare. We have to walk through this section. This has suddenly reminded me of an Oni Plays moment where he's they're doing voices for these kids. Alright, that's at least one reference that I could actually land. I remember the name Oni Plays. I didn't really watch them very much. Hardly at all, to be honest. But I did occasionally would watch a video of theirs if it popped up on my YouTube, but I haven't watched them for years at this point. So, these nasty little kids. We have walked through the gauntlet of them. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for I am wearing the head of a porcelain child. just need to find an object to use as a little throwable. So to do that, we have to come all the way up here. And that brain in a jar is looking like a mighty fine candidate. So we will pick that up and give it a toss. Give it a toss. And then we just need to carefully drop ourselves down without plummeting to our death. There we go. And then we can just hop all the way back down and use the brain to hit the button. There you go. And we are back with the teacher. Have to navigate around the teacher again as she prepares these science experiments, I suppose, for some dissection class. So this is usually how these sort of monstrous encounters work in these games. You're encountering these adults which are, 100 times your size, going around doing some activity. They're a janitor or a chef or a teacher. And if they see you, they will try to kill you. So you have to avoid them. There is a little issue inherent to horror games. I don't know how you get around this, but the best experience you can have with a horror game, in my opinion, is to never actually die or get caught, right? Because it feels like the moment that you die, the moment that you get grabbed and have to reload your last checkpoint, the tension begins to deflate from the situation. It doesn't mean that you're not going to not have fun or not be scared or that the game can't get your heart racing again. But every time that the game reminds you that there are no real consequences for failure, it breaks the illusion or the simulation of fear a little bit. Because it's like, oh no, I'm so scared, what's going to happen to me if this person catches me? And when that happens, you realize, oh, the answer is nothing. And what's really bad, the worst outcome, is when it starts to become tedious. So, say that there's an annoying platforming section or something, right before an enemy, and you have to do that whole platforming section, and then the enemy kills you, and suddenly you have to do that whole platforming section again. Now the emotion of fear is being replaced by annoyance and frustration, right? And what you want is for the player to feel like, oh no, they're about to catch me, I'm screwed. But you don't actually want the player to be caught, because that's how the illusion starts to break down. ours is definitely, you know, it's not safe from that same dynamic. If you're navigating some section and you keep getting grabbed by, you know, the big monstrous person, the big chef or whatever, the tension is going to drain away, and I have been in situations like that with this game. As I mentioned earlier, I do remember my first playthrough. Also, we have rescued 6 here. My first playthrough, I found this school section really annoying because there were a lot of traps, and the combat was sort of finicky and annoying. And so what would happen is I would run forward, I would activate a trap and get killed and then respawn. And I'd go, oh, okay, that's annoying. And then I would just go back and I would know the trap is there and I would avoid it. Because even if you saw, like, the trap trigger, the raised planks or whatever, you know, you didn't necessarily know what was coming down, and so if it was a bucket or a giant swinging light or whatever, and so that wasn't a very interesting friction to add to horror, right? That just kind of annoyed me a little bit. And it broke up the tension of the scares and also the thrill of the exploration. And then, of course, you add the weird, unpleasant combat, and suddenly you're doing 5 tries just to smash some toys, and you know, the tension has kind of entirely deflated from the game. And well, I do love the school level for its aesthetics and its tone and the elements. You know, I love the porcelain monster kids. In practice, I do remember in my first playthrough it landing pretty flat because of the issues I was having with it mechanically. But you know, overall I still do quite like this game. I think the first one, by my recollection, had less sticky moments like that. The first one is really good. I do recommend checking that out, and oh boy, 6 just went sicko mode, 6 went sicko mode. Smash that kid's head with her bare hands. Seems like she has some darkness in her, or the ability to really mess things up. I wonder if that will become relevant later in her storyline. So, feels like we are almost out of the school safely. There's not many kids around at this point. Seems like we've mostly left them behind. Little Nightmares 3 is a co-op. They're adding co-op gameplay to it, which could be interesting. Could be kind of fun to play this game with a friend, but I don't know. I hope the single player functionality is still solid enough to enjoy on your own. Because I sort of feel like, I don't know, yeah, it would be annoying if they gave up the single player feasibility just to add the multiplayer. But also, I'm excited for Little Nightmares 3, but it is a new developer, as I said. Tarsier is moving on to its own game. And so I don't know who's developing Little Nightmares 3, actually. I haven't looked into that. But I hope it'll be good. But obviously I'm unfamiliar with the developer, so I don't know to what degree I trust them. But I'm very excited for Reanimal, Tarsier Studios' next game, which comes out in a couple days, I think. I don't know exactly. I think October 10th, maybe, if I remember correctly. So, that will be very cool when that happens. So we just have to sneak past the teacher here while she is playing piano. And she is after us in the ventilation shaft. Oh my god, that's a disturbing face. So we just have to keep moving. That's gotta be uncomfortable, man. Shoving your face into the metal like that. And she retreats back to the school, and we have made good our escape. Though of course, who knows what fresh horrors await us deeper in the city. And we are emerging out into another one of these wide city vista shots. This time the road has collapsed in this wide chasm. But we can walk across this tiny little plank bridge. Watch those buildings sort of bend in towards the center. And that's the kind of surreal imagery I'm talking about, right? Not only the bending buildings, but the massive chasm, and also, you know, this tiny little plank bridge. What's it doing there? There's no reason for it to be there. But you just accept it because of the strangeness of the world. And it still all works together in my this one, this little puzzle here, I'm struggling with. And it's actually pretty obvious, but I just, I got stuck thinking two-dimensionally. I was just thinking, okay, yeah, you can move the dumpster forward and backward. Or pardon me, rather left or right, and not forward and backward. But, of course, you can move it backward, and so that's what you have to do. But I will figure that out soon enough. So, I'll probably actually make a video for Reanimal. Maybe Little Nightmares 3 as well, I don't know. I'm a little more excited for Reanimal just because it's a new world, and I'm very into the Little Nightmares world, but I also believe in not overusing IP, I guess. And making a third Little Nightmares isn't overusing by any stretch, but it's just it's nice to see an original world. In a time where there are so many remakes and sequels and legacy sequels and all that, it's always nice to see somebody create something original. And if Reanimal is coming out that early in October, as in the 10th, which is like a day or two from now, then I'll still have time to get it into my October spooky video schedule. Not that anybody would kill me for putting a spooky video in November, I'm sure, but so just continuing to wander through this city, and we have found a raincoat for 6. And so that's kind of a big moment in this game. It's like, oh, now she looks like her. Now she looks like herself from the first game. That is the costume that she wears in the first game, so also, not to repeat myself, but I apologize if you can hear my stomach growling. Probably you can't, I imagine you can't, but I know, I'm sorry, I say this like every video on this, but which one do I say more often? Do I say, I'm sorry if you can hear my stomach rumbling, or do I say something about my neighbor's washing machine more often? Those things both happen a lot. They both happen a lot. So, we are approaching the building that is sort of chapter 3 of this game. And I remember that one being kind of freaky. I think it does kind of that like weeping angel thing where stuff is frozen if you are looking at it and moving if you are not. But maybe we could check that out in a part 2 of this game. I don't know. Or maybe this will just be the last trip we take to Little Nightmares but it's a very short game, so I'm sure I could finish it in probably 3 episodes total. So, if you guys are interested in more Little Nightmares too, let me know. Also, a commenter did suggest this, and I thank you to them. It is a game that I had thought about making a video for, but your comment did help propel it to the front of my mind, and I thought it would be a great idea for October, so. Anyway, my friends, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Until then, please take care of yourselves, and I will do the same. Goodbye.